120 miles off the coast of Scotland in the middle of the North Sea, the largest oil platform in the world is on fire. Men are standing at the railings, 70 feet above black water, deciding whether to jump. Below them, the sea itself appears to be burning. In the accommodation block behind them, more than 80 men are waiting for a rescue that was never designed to come. All of it began with a single metal disc tightened by hand on a pipe that nobody told the night shift about. Piper Alpha stood 120 miles northeast of Aberdeen, anchoring a vast steel network of energy infrastructure in the cold, deep waters of the North Sea. Commissioned in 1976 and operated by Occidental Petroleum, the platform was a marvel of heavy engineering, designed to withstand the brutal environment of one of the most hostile maritime regions on Earth. By the summer of 1988, the platform had grown into an immense industrial titan. It was the single largest oil producer in the world, responsible for pumping roughly 10% of all North Sea oil and gas output. It was a massive, highly efficient wealth machine, operating around the clock to meet the demands of a modern British economy hungry for offshore energy. But behind the soaring production statistics and the corporate balance sheets was a densely populated, self-contained community. On the night of July 6, 1988, 226 men were on board. These were engineers, technicians, drillers, and catering staff working 12-hour shifts far from their families, living in a small steel town surrounded by water. Life on the rig revolved around the physical structure itself, a design where workspace and living quarters existed in tight, vertical proximity. The multi-story accommodation block, where the off-duty crew slept, ate, and relaxed, sat stacked directly above the high-pressure processing modules. Under normal operating conditions, this arrangement was a matter of practical efficiency, maximizing the limited footprint of a steel deck suspended above the ocean. On this night, however, it meant that the human heart of the platform was physically bound to its most volatile machinery, positioned only feet away from the heavy systems that kept the oil and gas flowing under immense, continuous pressure. Piper Alpha was not originally designed to handle the volatile gas mixture that would ultimately destroy it. When it first went online in 1976, it was purely an oil production platform. The engineering reflected this single purpose. Its internal safety barriers, the steel firewalls separating the massive processing decks, were built to contain oil fires, slow-burning, high-temperature events. They were never engineered to survive the violent, high-pressure shock waves of a gas explosion. But in 1978, the economics of the North Sea changed, and the platform underwent a major conversion. Workers installed a new gas compression system, transforming the oil rig into a dual facility that also processed and exported natural gas. This modification squeezed high-pressure gas lines, compressor trains, and highly volatile hydrocarbon liquids into tight modules that had been designed for a much simpler, less volatile process. The critical safety walls remained unchanged, rated only for oil fires, even as the risk profile of the platform shifted completely. At the heart of this new gas processing system were two massive condensate pumps, known simply as Pump A and Pump B. These machines pressurized and pumped liquefied petroleum gas toward the shore. To keep the platform running continuously, only one pump needed to operate at any given time. The other remained idle, serving as an identical backup ready to take over if the primary pump failed. On the afternoon of July 6, 1988, Pump B was carrying the entire load. Pump A had been shut down and isolated, handed over to maintenance technicians for a routine, planned overhaul of its pressure safety valve. It was a standard, everyday operational state, but it left the platform with no margin for error. During the day shift on July 6th, a maintenance crew began working on the idle Pump A. Their task was to remove the pump's pressure safety valve, designated PSV 504, for its routine recertification and overhaul. By the end of the shift, the work remained incomplete because the heavy rigging equipment needed to reinstall the valve was unavailable. To seal the open, high-pressure pipework, the fitters bolted a temporary flat metal disc, known as a blind flange, in its place. Because the job was scheduled to resume the next morning, they only hand-tightened the bolts. It was a practical, sensible decision at the time, but it left a temporary seal incapable of withstanding normal operating pressures. This physical hazard was immediately compounded by a systemic paper failure. The platform's permit-to-work system was designed to act as a fail-safe, ensuring no machinery under maintenance could be restarted. Two separate permits were active, one for the valve removal, another for the pump isolation. The permit for the safety valve removal should have been cross-referenced with the pump's operating status and handed directly to the night shift operations supervisor. Instead, the document was left sitting on a desk in the control room, separated from the primary pump permit. During the evening shift change, the verbal briefing was brief and informal. No one mentioned that Pump A's safety valve was gone, and no one mentioned that the backup pump was sealed only by a hand-tightened disc of metal. The paperwork remained buried on the desk, and the physical reality of the platform was lost in transition. Piper Alpha's written safety procedures were extensive, but on the drilling decks, daily practice had drifted far from the page. A fatal accident on the platform just 1 year earlier, in 1987, had warned of these exact dangers, exposing severe failures in the permit-to-work system and informal shift handovers. Occidental Petroleum accepted the audit findings but did not implement the recommended changes. The loose, verbal habits of the platform remained. At 9:45 p.m. on July 6th, the hidden vulnerability of this system became an active hazard. Condensate pump B suddenly tripped and stopped. In the control room, the status panels lit up. The pressure on the night crew was immediate and immense. If the flow of condensate halted, the platform's high-pressure systems would automatically bottle out, bringing 10% of the United Kingdom's offshore energy production to a complete standstill. The night crew had to keep the hydrocarbons moving. They looked at the standby pump, Pump A, which appeared to be fully operational. Because the day shift's maintenance permits were buried on a desk, and because no warning tags had been placed on the control panel, the operators had no reason to suspect the pump was incomplete. To the men on shift, starting the standby pump was a routine, logical decision to keep the platform running. At 10 p.m., unaware that the pump's safety valve was missing, and its pipe was sealed only by a hand-tightened metal disc, the control room authorized the restart. The operator reached forward and turned to the switch to energize Pump A. The moment the switch turned, high-pressure hydrocarbon condensate flooded into Pump A. The liquid, pressurized to 1,000 pounds per square inch, rushed through the pipework and struck the temporary blind flange. Because the bolts were only hand-tightened, the metal disc could not contain the force. The bolts stretched, the gasket blew sideways, and the seal failed instantly. For 30 seconds, a high-velocity jet of propane-rich condensate sprayed directly into Module C. Roughly 70 pounds of the volatile liquid escaped, vaporizing on contact with the air and expanding into a dense, highly flammable vapor cloud. Nearby workers heard a sudden, loud warning, a sustained, high-pitched screaming from the pipework as the pressurized gas tore through the failed seal. At 10 o'clock, the gas cloud found an ignition source and detonated. The force of the explosion was immense. The blast wave hit the surrounding firewalls, but these steel barriers were designed only to contain slow-burning oil fires. They were never built to withstand the violent overpressure of a gas explosion. The walls buckled and collapsed outward, throwing heavy steel debris across the deck. This structural failure immediately ruptured adjacent high-pressure oil lines, pouring out a massive torrent of fuel. What began as a localized maintenance oversight instantly became a massive, uncontrollable, crude oil fire. feeding on the platform's primary production lines. When the blast ripped through the platform, the automatic safety systems should have flooded the decks with seawater. They did not. Earlier that evening, between 7 p.m. and 7:45 p.m., the automated firewater pumps had been switched to manual control. Divers were working in the sea below, and the safety protocol was designed to protect them from being sucked into the massive water intakes. It was a standard precaution, but it was done without a formal risk assessment. With the control room devastated and the men who knew how to start the pumps manually dead or trapped by smoke, the deluge system remained dry. The disaster now expanded beyond the physical footprint of Piper Alpha. The platform was part of an interconnected subsea network linked directly to the neighboring Claymore and Tartan platforms. On Claymore and Tartan, managers could see the horizon glowing orange. They knew Piper Alpha was burning, yet they kept pumping oil and gas directly into the shared pipeline. Company protocol dictated that only the onshore office in Aberdeen had the authority to order a shutdown. Fearing the immense financial penalty of an unauthorized halt, and with communication lines to Aberdeen failing, they continued to feed high-pressure fuel directly into the heart of the inferno, transforming a localized accident into a regional catastrophe. At 10:20 p.m., the intense heat proved too much for the high-pressure gas riser connecting the Tartan platform to Piper Alpha. The steel pipe ruptured. The resulting explosion was massive, sending a colossal fireball hundreds of feet into the night sky and pushing flames to around 200 meters high. The sheer scale of the fire immediately ruled out any chance of helicopter evacuation. Meanwhile, inside the platform, the safety manual dictated a clear, orderly path. The standard emergency protocol instructed the crew to gather in the accommodation block and await rescue. 84 men followed these instructions exactly. They sat in the galley, relying on the walls and the rules to keep them safe. But the platform's legacy firewalls were never built to stop a gas inferno. As the structure buckled, thick, toxic smoke and intense heat began to seep directly into the living quarters. The designated safe haven slowly turned into a trap. There were no orders to evacuate, and no announcements came over the public address system. More than 80 men remained exactly where they were told to wait, dying in the darkness while waiting for help. To survive, men had to break the rules. Those who stayed in the galley, following the emergency procedures, never made it out. Others realized the danger, ignored the muster plan, and fought their way through the thick smoke to the outside decks. From there, they faced a drop of up to 50 meters into the cold North Sea. 61 men survived, almost all of them by actively disobeying the platform's emergency protocols. Below, rescue boats from nearby vessels navigated through burning oil to pull survivors from the water. The work was incredibly dangerous. Falling debris struck the fast rescue craft Orion, killing 2 crew members. The final death toll reached 167, 165 platform workers and those 2 rescuers. It had taken only 22 minutes from the first explosion for the main structure of the world's largest oil platform to collapse. The wreckage would continue to burn for more than 3 weeks. 1 week after the disaster, Lord Cullen was appointed to lead a public inquiry into why Piper Alpha fell apart. But the physical evidence was gone, swallowed by the North Sea. Because every senior manager on the platform had died in the fire, investigators had to rebuild the night from different fragments, survivor accounts, recovered paperwork, and the salvaged accommodation block. Over 13 months and 180 days of hearings, the inquiry pieced together the sequence of events. When the final report was published in November 1990, it verified that the disaster began when the night shift restarted Pump A, forcing high-pressure condensate through the hand-tightened blind flange. But the inquiry looked beyond the physical failure. It concluded that while the loose bolts triggered the explosion, the underlying cause was Occidental Petroleum's management of safety. The procedures were in place, but the daily practice was different. The procedures were in place. The practice was different. Lord Cullen's words exposed a culture where Piper Alpha's permit-to-work system was operated loosely and habitually departed from. Training was learned informally by watching others, required emergency drills were ignored, audits missed major flaws, and the lessons from the fatal 1987 accident were never acted on. No criminal charges were ever brought against Occidental Petroleum, though insured losses reached £1.7 billion. The disaster forced a complete regulatory restructuring. The government adopted all 106 of Cullen's recommendations, moving safety oversight away from the department that also promoted oil. In 1992, the Offshore Installation Safety Case regulations came into force. Today, the Aberdeen Memorial Garden carries all 167 names on a quiet stone wall. It remains the standing record of a tragedy born of ordinary people making reasonable decisions inside a system that had quietly stopped working. Today, the wreckage of Piper Alpha lies quiet under the North Sea. But that quiet is deceptive. As energy demands push us into increasingly extreme frontiers, the real hazard is never a single, sudden catastrophe. It is the silent accumulation of everyday sensible compromises. Safety remains a choice we must actively make. Join the conversation in the comments.